Behaviors between husband and wife. Wanting it makes it more appealing. So until now, we've discussed 3 of the bridges to cross over to get to our exotic island. And now I want to backtrack for a bit and just discuss what is happening actually between you and your husband from the onset of your period, from when you entered the status called nida, until you come up from the waters of the mikvah. How are you behaving between spouses? What is going on in your house? What does it look like? What does it feel like? We all want a happy marriage. And Judaism has many, many words to express this idea of happiness. In fact, the last one of the 7 blessings that we bless a bride and groom with under the chuppah, under the wedding canopy, we say you should have a life filled with 8 forms of happiness. Gila, Rina, Ditza, and Chedva, which mean joy, happiness, jubilation, and delight. Ahava, Achva, Shalom, and Reut, which means peace, harmony, friendship, and togetherness. And together, we bless the couple that they should experience all 8 forms of this happiness. And one of the great sages, the Maharal of Prague, teaches that Gila, Rina, Ditza, V'chedva, this jumping up and down type of excited happiness, joy, jubilation, delight, this occurs when a woman is physically intimate with her spouse. Ahava, Achva, Shalom, V'reut, love, togetherness, friendship, and harmony. When does that happen, he says? At the time when she is in nida, at the time when she's physically separated from her spouse. And if a couple goes through both of these phases during their marriage, if they have a time when they're experiencing physical closeness and a time when they're experiencing emotional closeness, that equals the ultimate beauty in Judaism, which is balance. That's when all of the marriage muscles are being exercised and are working really well. Imagine for a moment that a girl gets engaged and she's so excited. She wants to let everybody know this great news. So she calls up her friends and she says, Suri, guess what? I'm engaged. I'm a bride. I know, it's amazing. I know, he's so nice. He's wonderful. He's so smart and amazing. And she's talking all about him and she's so excited. She's jumping up and down. That's the Gila, Rina, Ditza, V'chedva type of happiness. That's that first type of happiness. 2 weeks later, she's sitting on the couch after a big shopping spree, setting up her future household. And she sits back. She's thinking about just an ordinary day of the week, living with her husband. And she says, I can't wait. I'm so excited to just be a wife. Is she happy? Yes, absolutely. Why isn't she jumping up and down? It's a different type of happiness. It's a calm, cool, and collected type of happiness. I often say, if my brides were still jumping up and down 2 weeks after the engagement like that, I'd put them on a tranquilizer. And if when the day that they got engaged, the day of the celebration, the day of the great news, they were like, hi, yeah, I just wanted to let you know I'm engaged. Yeah, he's really nice. I would be very concerned. So each type of happiness has an appropriate place. There are times in our lives for vacation, and there are times in our lives for routine. And both are beautiful as long as they happen in balance. And that's what the Torah is teaching us. And that's what the Maharal of Prague, this great Jewish sage, is teaching when it comes to this blessing. We bless the bride and groom, that they're always going to know when to use which type of happiness, on which side of the circle. And they'll always know to maximize the joy that you can get out of that part of the month. Imagine for a moment that a person had lazy eye. So what does the doctor do when somebody has lazy eye? They actually cover the strong eye. Why? So that the weaker muscles in the lazy eye could now get to work. They're not going to be able to rely on that strong eye anymore. They're going to have to do the work on their own. Many of us are familiar with Dr. Gary Chapman and his amazing book called The 5 Love Languages. If not, go out and get it. It is a fantastic read. But he talks about the 5 primary love languages that exist between a husband and a wife, the way that we kind of fill our love tanks. And one of the most common ways that men often fill their love tanks, and many of us women as well, is via physical touch and physical intimacy and intimate relations. And many of the women have asked me over the years, this sounds so difficult. How are we going to manage without any intimate physical touch? You don't understand, Rochel. My love language is physical touch. What am I going to do? And this is exactly what I answer them. I explain to them that's exactly why you need this. Because really a couple should be exercising all of the 5 love languages. Every single one of the love languages, words of affirmation, quality time, gifts, acts of service for one another, and physical touch, they're all important. We need all of those things to create a beautiful, full, balanced relationship. And so a marriage cannot survive on only using physical touch as a love language. And therefore, it's kind of like the lazy eye. We're going to need to cover up that strong eye. If that's your story, then you do need to cover up that strong eye for these 12 days or the 13 days. And that way, the emotional aspect of your relationship, the other 4 love languages, can now be exercised. The Torah tells us that there's no marital intimacy allowed during the Nida days, and we also abstain from intimate physical touch. And that would be like hugging, kissing, caressing, and sharing the same bed. And think about things that you would never be doing with your boss, okay? Those are the things that are clearly intimate, unless the boss is your husband, of course. Then that would be considered harassment. That would not be professional. Those are the practices that are directly biblical, and we abstain from those. And then in addition to this, the Torah advises, and it uses the language, lo tikrav. You should not come close, meaning a couple should not even come close to becoming physically intimate. This is an interesting directive in the Torah, where the Torah is actually telling us, Jewish people, create fences. Make sure that you understand the magnetic pull, the power of attraction that exists between husband and wife, that should exist between husband and wife. It should be so strong that even a suggestion, even a touch, even a speck of physical intimacy could bring them to transgress one of the Torah commandments. And therefore, the rabbis set up a system where we would not be in danger of coming close to becoming intimate, to becoming physical. And these laws actually have the ability to teach us a lot about intimacy. And they have the ability to enhance our intimate lives. What am I talking about? Sometimes I get a call from an observant Jewish woman. She's been keeping these laws all her life. And she says to me, Rochel, I'm having trouble with intimacy. And I say, okay, let's review the laws of Nida. Let's talk about the way that you're behaving with your husband during this time. And she says, wait, Rochel, I don't think you heard me. I said I'm having a trouble with intimacy. And I say, yes, I heard you. Let's relearn these laws so that you could understand how to be intimate on the other side of that circle. And here's how it works. The way that we explore our husbands is the same way that a baby explores his world. How does a baby explore his world? Puts everything in his mouth. He smells. He looks around. He touches everything, right? I remember when I was living in Philadelphia, there was a children's museum. It was called the Please Touch Museum. My kids always loved to go there. My husband loved to go there also. Because normally when you go to a museum, everything is please don't touch. And so they knew that for children, they wanted to touch. So it was called the Please Touch Museum. This is how children explore their world, through all of their 5 senses. And we also, as a married couple, explore each other with every single one of the 5 senses. And therefore, there is a behavior, there is a bit of distance that we want to keep during this nida status for every one of those 5 senses. Why? What is this trying to build within us? A resensitization for the beauty of intimacy between husband and wife. And even if you don't feel that now, when you start keeping these laws, they will actually help you to resensitize yourself and you will start feeling it again. A lot of times people say to me, really? I mean, if my husband touches me, like he taps me on the shoulder to get my attention, that's gonna make me want to do something with him? And I say, yes, it should. I hope it does. Because when my husband taps me on the shoulder, there's a shiver that goes down to my foot. And that's the way it should be. And if it doesn't now, it's okay. Don't worry about it. These laws will help create that intimacy and create that spark. The strongest of all the 5 senses, and therefore the one that we're more careful about, that has the most laws surrounding it, is actually the sense of touch. There's a beautiful book by a writer, Gila Mandelson, in Israel. It's called The Magic Touch. And I love that title because she talks about premarital touch and what it can and cannot do and how that works and how powerful touch is. And therefore, as much as possible, we should reserve it for the ones that we're committed to. When a man in Jewish law puts on tefillin, there are 2 sets of tefillin. One set of tefillin goes on his head, and the other set of tefillin goes on his hand. And this teaches us something very, very powerful. What is the point of tefillin? Inside the box, tefillin are those black leather boxes with the straps that you may have seen men putting on in the synagogue. Or you might have seen a Chabad rabbi stop somebody and say, can I put tefillin on you in the street? And those are those black leather straps and boxes. And inside that box is actually written the mantra of the Jewish people, which is the famous Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. God, you are the source of everything. You are complete oneness. And what the tefillin, what the purpose of these boxes do, is to say to the man, I want you to take every one of your 5 senses and I want you to direct them towards God. Interesting. So 4 of the senses are in the head, and therefore they kind of work with that tefillin that's on the head. And the tefillin that are on the hand represent the 5th sense, and that is the sense of touch. In other words, the sense of touch gets its own set of tefillin, which means it's 4 times more powerful than any one of the other 4 senses. That's also why it's its own love language in the 5 love languages. And Dr. Chapman explains this idea that when you touch somebody, you're literally, it's the closest way to giving them a piece of yourself. And that's why, when I was growing up, if you remember the ads for Bell Telephone, reach out and touch someone, right? Those were such powerful words, that slogan, because the idea of touch engenders closeness and engenders a gift of self. And therefore, most of these behaviors will revolve around physical touch. And the Torah teaches us, and the rabbis expand on this idea and say, try to refrain from all physical touch, even if you don't think it's intimate, like taking lint off of his jacket, or trying to get a bug off of his shirt, or tapping him on the shoulder to get his attention, or brushing past him and knocking by him. Let's try to not have any casual touch in our relationship. And that way, we'll bring all physical touch to the level of intimate touch. And that's really my blessing for all of you, that every single touch becomes very, very intimate. And when we start keeping these laws, that's actually what starts happening. We even have laws that govern indirect contact, like touching each other through an object. For example, tapping him with a pen, holding something together. And even something as small as that can actually create intimacy. So when you do come home from the mikvah, and you're not in the state of nida, you're not going to get lazy. You're actually going to walk over and specifically tap him on the shoulder to get his attention, or hold something together, or do an activity where you're actually interacting physically. Sometimes this is hard for us to relate to because we are so influenced by the society around us that has really desensitized us to all forms of physical contact between male and female. Like, so much goes nowadays. But when we abstain, when we refrain, then that sensitivity will come back. And that's really a beautiful gift that mikvah and the laws that surround it have to offer us. The next category, the next sense that I want to talk about is tasting. And there are a lot of behaviors around the kitchen, eating together, serving one another, drinking, having a glass of wine together. All of these beautiful, intimate things, we're also going to be conscious the entire time that we're going to take one step back in a lot of these areas. People that are in intimate terms share food. They make eating together part of their lives. And this is really an important lesson for us, that we shouldn't just eat together or have meals together because it's convenient and I don't want to serve supper twice. But eating together actually engenders closeness. Eating together is intimate. They did a study. Psychologists asked 1,000 people, would you rather go to a greasy restaurant similar to McDonald's, but we'll pretend there was a kosher version of a greasy restaurant? Would you rather go there with a friend, or would you rather go to a fine restaurant by yourself? 999 out of 1,000 people answered that they'd rather go to the greasy place with a friend. People enjoy eating with one another. I just overheard a class, and the presenter was talking about dating, and she just wanted to get an example from the audience. So she said, what do you like to do with friends? And the girls all screamed out, eat! So this is something that really has become very social. And therefore, we should use this aspect to engender closeness in our marriages. Our sages understood this years ago, and therefore they did create many observances around the areas of food. For example, we're careful not to eat from the same dish directly together. For example, a bag of chips, a bowl of popcorn. We'll take it, we'll put it down on a plate or a napkin and then eat it. But we won't stick our hand into the same bag at the same time and put the chip directly in our mouths. We try during this time to refrain from sharing an individually sized food item. For example, a donut or a muffin or an individual roll. So if you're going to the bakery with your husband and you're like, let's get that donut and let's share it, right? That's something beautiful. That's something intimate. And let's try to remember that so that when we're not in nida, we're actually, let's get 2 donuts and share both. So that we have this idea that we're sharing and we are sticking our hands into the same bag of chips. And there are numerous technical behaviors that surround pouring each other wine and serving each other directly in front of the other. And this is, again, all to just remind us, keep us mindful of our status with each other during food and eating times, because they do engender that intimacy. I want to share with you a cute story. I once walked into my former student's house, and she was now married with a family. And the 2 of them traveled very often, and they used to go to her parents' house, which was about 4 hours from where they lived. And they did it on a somewhat regular basis. So she opened up her pantry, and she said, Rochel, come here, I want to show you something. She said, you see this? These are our nida snacks, and these are the snacks that we use when we could be intimate. And I thought it was adorable. She had one side of the closet with the individual snack bags. So when she was on the nida side of her circle, they took 2 bags. And then when she was able to be physically intimate with her husband, they grabbed the family pack of chips. And I just thought to myself, how do you think she feels when she goes to the cabinet and she gets to take the big bag? Right? Something so seemingly mundane and ordinary, like you're going to grab a snack for the car, now all of a sudden becomes so special, so beautiful, that she's thinking, oh yay, we could do this. We could stick our hands in the bag. I'm going to put it in the dashboard in between the 2 seats, and that's going to be so intimate. And that's really the beauty of Taharat HaMishpacha. That's the beauty of how these laws can help develop that magnetic attraction between the 2 of us. And so when we're not in nida, remember, do all of these things. Pour for each other, pass to each other, share out of one dish, serve each other directly. The sense of hearing. We shouldn't play a musical instrument or sing for our husbands. For me personally, this is not an issue because I don't sing and I don't play a musical instrument. But if you have that beautiful talent, then save that for the other side of the circle. Smelling. I remember once, many years ago, playing Trivial Pursuit. And the question was, which of the 5 senses is most strongly linked to memory? And the answer was smell. My son walks in the door sometimes on Fridays and he says, I smell sweet potato pie. And it brings back, all these positive, pleasant memories for him. And so too, with us in our marriages, smell can be a very powerful sense that we can use. And so a man should not smell the perfume of his wife when she is in nida. Because obviously when he smells that smell, I hope he has some good memories associated with that. And so this is something that you do want to use, again, on the other side of the circle and make those memories happen. Sight. Women are primarily aroused by touch, and men are primarily aroused by sight. Which is why this category has no restrictions for the woman, and it does have restrictions for the man. A husband may not gaze on any part of your body that is normally covered. So think about how you would normally look for somebody else's husband. What parts of the body would you normally keep covered for others? And those are the same parts of the body that your husband would refrain from gazing at during this time. And let's be sensitive. Let's try not to undress right in front of him, because I think that would make it a little bit difficult, especially if you're trying to have a conversation and you want him to look at you. And we also want to have special nightwear for this side of the circle. And we also want to have special nightwear for the other side of the circle. And that way, again, it becomes special. Something that I haven't seen in a while, like that diamond that I kept in the box. And now I open the box and you get to peek and you get to see it. And now you don't. Now you see it, now you don't. And that makes it more special. It makes it exciting. It makes it something to look forward to. There's pleasure in that unwrapping later on the other side of the circle. I had a friend who grew up without knowing too much about her Judaism. And later in life, she started learning more and she started to practice more and more. And she started to dress a little bit more Jewishly as time went on, but she was still frequenting the young professional hangouts like bars and clubs and things like that. And she told me once that an interesting thing happened. She started to notice that as she started covering herself up more and as she started to dress more Jewishly, more modestly, the phenomenon that occurred was that more boys started approaching her. And we were talking about the idea that there is this pleasure in mystery. There is this excitement in not having everything in your face. And this is exactly what we were just discussing. The Torah teaches us, right? You want to be cherished. You want to be special. You want your value to be raised in your husband's eyes. When we keep the Torah and when we embrace this gift of mikvah, that is what happens. This is such another fringe benefit, actually, of going to the mikvah, that our value is raised in our husband's eyes. I become so much more than just one aspect. I'm a whole person with many parts to me. And it really increases the dignity and the beauty of our marriages. The Talmud teaches us that Rabbi Meir asked, why does the Torah command that a woman be nida for 7 days after the period? That's a long time. And he answers, he says, so that she should be as beloved to him as on the day of their wedding, when she comes out of the mikvah. Again, the goal is that our relationship should be so strong that not touching each other directly or indirectly, not sharing from the same dish, not using any of the 5 senses, not seeing each other's bodies, or a little kiss or a little hug becomes so meaningful, not meaningless. And we resensitize ourselves to a higher and higher level of passion every single month. And the hand of Hashem will determine how much of each approach the couple needs, and our task to enjoy and derive the maximum benefit from the possibilities offered by both parts of the relationship. And my advice to all of my brides and my advice to you is to enjoy every place while you are there, to really reap the maximum benefit of that side of the circle. So enjoy wherever you are now.